Welcome to the Woodpreneur Podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larosiliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur Podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur Podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode. All right. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur Podcast. This is your host, Steve Larosiliere. Today's guests are Max Sheldon and John Henry from Pantorouter. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Great.
for having us.
Why don't you tell everybody the origin story for Pantorouter? How'd you get started?
Yeah, so in 2015, I was interested in Matthias Wandel's version of the Pantorouter that was made out of wood. He built as a YouTube project and offered the plans for sale. Well, I saw it and I was in. I really, really liked the mechanics of it. I loved the idea. So I bought the plans and they sat on my bench for about 6 months. And I finally realized, look, I'll probably never get to building this. And if I did, I wonder if I could make it accurate enough to do the kinds of things that it should
Yeah.
be able to do. About the same time, there's a young man living in Japan who made one first out of steel, and then I thought, no, that's not going to work. But then he made it out of aluminum, and that was the right material for this type of product. So he offered it for sale, and there was an exchange between he and Matthias Wandel on a YouTube post, and I saw it, and I immediately contacted him and said, "Hey, I want one." So I sent him the money, and a month goes by, and 2 months, and 3 months, and 4 months, and during this time we're chatting back and forth, and I've traveled extensively in Asia, especially in Japan, and know the area that he lives in. We were able to chat about Kyoto and the the cherry blossom festival and this and that. And that led to eventually I got my machine and it was a box of parts. It was not a really, in my opinion, a sellable
Yeah.
product. So I told him, look, I'll put it together, I'll keep track, and I'll help you. I'll kind of draft up a installation manual and take some pictures along the way, which I did, and produce this little simplified installation or assembly manual. And he eventually said, well, Mac, why don't you become my distributor in the U.S.? And I said, well, what does that look like? And he said, well, you buy 50 and you put up a website and you'll sell them. I wasn't so sure, but at the end of the day, I did. And I bought 50 boxes of parts. And he awarded me North and South America as a sales territory. And we endeavored to really make it a marketable product by packaging it correctly and by documenting it correctly. And he came over with the box, and we put these packages together that now we're looking pretty good. So over the years, we worked together to develop the product incrementally to improve it in every aspect. We invested in castings instead of the extrusions, and we now have 10 patents on the machine including, I think we're up to 150 different claims within those 10 patents. So it's become a a highly valued woodworking joinery machine in thousands of shops across the country and around the world. A few years ago, I took over the entire global Pantorouter operation, and now it's all run from here. Our little humble little place out in Oregon, USA. We ship all over the world and continue to do R&D and to do some incremental improvements.
That's great. That's awesome. And what were you doing before this?
Oh, it is completely unrelated. All I wanted to do was to build a
Mhm.
wood shop for my
Yeah,
retirement, and that led to the Pantorouter and many other machines. But no, I'm an engineer and was involved in heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration. 40 years ago, I built one of the very first water heating heat pumps, and 40 years ahead of our time. But spent 20 years in the spray polyurethane foam business and doing building science calculations and helping customers to run their business. So anyway, it's been a varied career, and the HVAC side of it is what led me to spend about 10 years knocking around Asia. Made 80 trips there over my career. But now I'm settled in, and we make Pantorouters and again sell them all over the world, and
that's
yeah, it's been
awesome.
fun.
And John Henry, when did you come into the picture?
Uh, Good question. 2017
Yeah,
ish. So 6, 7 years ago.
yeah,
Um, and at that point in time, I was transitioning from working in kitchens to doing my own kind of woodworking business. And as I'm sure you're familiar with, and probably a lot of the listeners as well, is it was at the beginning just trying to get any and all work you can. And I was actually buying a router table fence off of Mac on Craigslist, and uh, came out here, and basically Mac had kind of shown me some of the things that he had going on, and an earlier version of the Pantorouter, but kind of just threw it out there that if you need some extra help or extra hands doing any odd jobs, let me know. And over over that period of time, it was really beneficial to be able to simultaneously build furniture and get out consistent hours here, and also be able to utilize this machine in my own work. So it worked out really nicely.
When you first started this product, what did you have a demographic of person in mind, or did you like what was the big problem that you were solving? Because you know how most products start with a problem. Like, what was the problem that the Pantorouter was solving?
yeah. So as far as demographics, that came later. I really didn't
Mm-hmm.
know, but the problem was
Mm-hmm.
joinery. That there's a million different ways to make mortise and tenon, box joints,
Mm-hmm.
dovetails. And those joints have been around for mortise and tenon, thousands of years. Box joints and dovetails a little more recently, but not much. And they, we can all do it. We can use table saws and band saws and other adaptations of tools and machines that weren't specifically designed for this, but sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
sketchy, sometimes it's
Dangerous,
downright
yeah.
dangerous, sometimes it's just cumbersome, and you'd rather have that table saw set up for
Mm-hmm.
something else, some other operation, but now it's stuck with this one. So anyway, the dedicated joinery machine just makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. You can set it up lightning fast. I mean, in a matter of seconds, we can have a template located in center. We can have our our workpiece centered both horizontally and vertically, and then we can cut it and have it ready for glue up in 3, 4, 5 minutes. So, I mean, that makes so much
Yeah.
sense. And this is strong professional joinery too. This is not your basic floating tenons. It's by no means pocket holes and
Yeah.
plywood. Um, yeah, it's not terribly expensive, and I think one of the coolest things is there's no
Yeah.
CNC. There's no designing, drafting. Um, there's no, and that's the CAD portion. There's no G code and G code manipulation. Um, uh, there's not a CNC operation. Instead, we say it's digital. Our digits on
Yeah.
our fingers. Well, we use it's it's handmade furniture using a hand tool, just like we do with other router operations and such.
Yeah. And to expand on that slightly, I mean, the uh, problem that I think a lot of furniture makers can encounter with clients is they want the nicest material and the best joinery and all of these really beautiful details, or better construction than they would get from a flat packed, you know, piece of furniture they would get from a large distributor. And then their budget doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
align with it. So it was something that was really appealing to me, at least, where, I could still build a dovetail drawer or six of them, or, use really strong joinery for a table base, and feel confident that you're not, making something that might fall apart. This is time tested joinery, but it was kind of a value added proposition to a client. And I think it's a really fine line between making no money as a furniture maker and delivering what a client is looking for. And so that was certainly what drew me to it.
It feels like a no-brainer.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sitting here looking at the product and I'm looking at what it's able to do and what the alternative is. And it's
Yeah.
the danger, A, the danger, B, the skill, uh, three, the amount of tools that you replace. I was like,
Right.
it, and what you just said, John Henry, makes so much sense. Like what you're able to do is actually bring the cost down, because
Mhm.
most custom furniture, especially on the joinery end, what you're actually doing is kind of like debunking the whole how, like, this style of woodworker that just goes nerdy over joinery and dovetails and that kind of stuff, right? Like you're just kind of simplifying and demystifying that, and through that process. What in the initial sort of launch of this, especially in the US, like what were some of the challenges that you had to overcome to to sort of get this out there?
So it's a very demonstrable product. If I just tried to describe it to you, it's a horizontally held router that's held in a pantograph
Mm-hmm.
mechanism, 2-to-1 reduction. That doesn't have the same impact or the
Yeah.
same meaning as watch this as we cut a
Yeah.
joint. So it's magic when you see the joinery actually made and how simple it is, and the fact that it uses only one template for both the mortise and the
Mm-hmm.
tenon, for both the pins and the tails for both sides of the box joint, and then the fact that not only can it do right angle joinery, it can do angles and it can do compound angles just by tilting the table and skewing our piece. And it's so eh, it does seem like a no-brainer to all of our customers who use it. But to those who have never seen it before, it can be mystifying until you actually watch it work. So the challenge was showing people what it does, not just telling.
Uh,
Magazine advertisements can show the
hmm
machine, it can describe it, but video is really
for
where it's
sure.
at. And so uh, we were very, very fortunate to align ourselves with some really, really great people.
Yeah.
Number one, also happen to be wonderful craftspeople, and they love the pan router. So they demonstrate it, they use it, they show it um, in their YouTube feeds and Instagram, and that's really been number one, a whole lot
Yeah.
of fun, and number two, very beneficial to the
It
business.
must feel really good to see people like it make an impact on people's work, right? Immediately.
Yes,
And they
yes,
come up with stuff that I don't think we would have ever imagined trying to do. And
true.
you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? I could use it for sauce hinges or some weird application that you never would have thought of. And I mean, I think the other major challenge, which um, I think a lot of people can relate to as buyers of tools, is the gimmicky side of a lot of woodworking accessories. And if you only just buy this one thing, then all of a sudden you're going to be a great woodworker and it's so easy to use. And then you sort of get it and you realize it doesn't quite do what you want it to and it's not that easy to use, and ultimately I kind of just threw away that money. And it's an appealing prospect, but it very rarely
hmm
pans out. And I think that the prevalence of that kind of makes any introduction of a new system or tool, people are
Yeah.
wary. And woodworkers find methods they like and they often stick with it. And to say that, I know you've been using these four different tools to make this joint before, but what if I told you I could do it in 30 minutes instead of half a day? And it uses the same
Yeah.
single machine. And it kind of sounds too good to be true. And it seems like a,
Hokey kind
um,
of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think kind of like to Mac's point, just getting it in the hands of enough people who are real furniture makers or woodworkers, and kind of getting some of that natural confirmation and legitimacy from our users to overcome some of that. But
I think in many ways, if I look at, I'm just looking at some of your Instagram videos. I think the thing that I think about is now you've made woodworking and this minute detail that adds so much value to a
Mm,
piece. You've streamlined and automated it, and then therefore made it more accessible to people that never normally would have access to that.
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To the point to that point, we sell a lot of
Yeah,
schools.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We sell high schools, shops all over the country and through Canada. Even junior high schools are using these in craft programs and whatnot. And one of the main reasons is that it's the safest way to use a router, in my opinion. Both hands are firmly on control
Yeah.
levers. You've got the at the template, you've got a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage over the bit. At the handle, it's 2.5-to-1. So it's you can do climb cuts, regular cuts. It's just it's the again the safest way, in my opinion, the safest way to use a woodworking router.
Then to have some teenage kid try to use a table saw, like
Mm.
Yeah, right,
Well,
right,
and at least talking to shop teachers, a lot of the challenge, or one of the many challenges in that environment is, you're trying to get kids engaged in this thing that's completely foreign, and it can be discouraging at first and not all that gratifying. And I think uh, if you can make a really simple box with a great fitting joint, or a small stool with a perfect fitting mortise and tenon. That gratification and level of excitement goes up so much, and that kind of encourages them to pursue other
Yeah,
avenues of
yeah,
joinery. We're by no means saying this is the only way to ever cut a joint, but I think to get people excited about woodworking at such a young age, it's incredible what some of those students are making.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is there is there just one size, or is there bigger size? Are there bigger sizes?
So no, we've got
Yeah.
one size, and we do offer just a myriad of
Mm-hmm.
different templates, and it's kind of interesting. I tend to um, buy the base model and see what I want over time. But I tell you, 95% of our people, customers, have purchased what we call an all-in package. It's everything that you need for mortise and tenon, box joints, and dovetails. Over 150 sizes
Wow.
of mortise and tenon, variably spaced box joints and dovetails. They go all
Yeah.
in, and so it kind of surprised me. But they say, look, I would end up spending a whole lot more if I just pieced it out than just doing it now and being done. And in my shop, I try to buy tools where I only cry once.
Sure.
I only I only cry over the initial price, but I never cry after
But
that
are you really
because
ever
I
crying?
know that
You're
I've
never really
really
crying. You're
invested.
excited. Like you're
Yeah,
never like
exactly.
you're never crying. Yeah.
Uh,
So
Yeah.
talk to me about some of your customers. What do you think your makeup is between hobbyists, side hustle versus professionals? Like,
Yeah.
who are they?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Our customers range from 30s to
Mm-hmm.
me, on the upper end, 70s,
Mm-hmm.
80s, and we've got customers who are in their
Mm.
90s, who call periodically and ask a question or two. Um, they tend to be a little older. They tend to be hobbyists, probably, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
70% hobbyists. And then the boutique furniture makers are represent another sector, and they tend to be, a little younger. They're 30s, 40s, 50s generally, and then schools again, significant portion of the business. And so we haven't run hard
Mm-hmm.
demographics, but is about where it is. Kind of the higher end tool. A lot of guys too are not that great at craftspeople, like me. But I love
Yeah.
tools, and I love learning how to operate tools. And so we have some, guys who just love good quality tools, and so
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a range.
And I think we do see some of that side hustle side of things from what might be considered a hobbyist crowd. I think a lot of people utilize woodworking as a way to fund their tool habit,
Yeah, that's
and
it.
can also be uh, nice to be able to sell some pieces, even if that's not necessarily your named profession. Or I mean, we get a lot of people who uh, probably wouldn't call themselves a professional woodworker, but then they send you a photo of what they built, and you're like, "Oh my God, this is
Yeah,
incredible!"
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And then we've seen some, not a huge percentage by any means, but more dedicated use, larger manufacturing or industrial
mhm,
applications where they're not interested in 90% of what you can do, but the fact that you can put two holes at this angle, space this far apart, that is the alternative is very expensive multi-axis CNC
Yeah.
machine. And so anything from piano key makers to what are some other weird, there's a timber framing company
Yeah.
that has kind of done some
Yeah.
interesting modular timber frame stuff with it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's
All
a
on
lot of
that,
companies that
all
just
on
hit.
that singular piece.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
A guy who makes hammers, and they're used for a sawtooth
Yeah.
setting, and he had a heck of a time finding the right piece to make the oval on the end of it,
The
the
tenant,
tenon
yeah.
on the end of the hammer handle. So um, the piano key guy, a crazy application. They restore pianos and they have to remove the
Yeah.
ivory and do it very precisely. And so they can do that in an operation, single setup on the Pantorouter in a few
Huh.
seconds.
Out of the
And
box template.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Without damaging the
crazy
ivory. So you could
application.
just take off the wood keys and it's just like all around it.
So no, actually, they take the ivory off and
Okay.
replace it where it's been damaged or
Or worn out,
Okay.
essentially.
yeah, worn
Gotcha.
out.
Gotcha.
Right.
Wow. Without
Yeah.
yeah, no, I
So,
get it. I get it. That's really fascinating. I'm wondering because like you just reminded me there was a guy who'd probably spent, I don't know, 6 to 8 months trying to figure out a chair design, and he was trying to custom like use this 5 axis CNC to just create this particular
Right.
design. And every time I talked to him, because he had this vision in his head about what he wanted to do, but he needed to continually test it back and forth, and it was taking a very long time. And from where the CNC was,
mhm.
from where his shop was, so that he'd have to like hand cut everything and then see if he could fit it onto this. And it took like an, and I just kept thinking like, I wonder if he had a Pantorouter, like what, like what would
Yeah.
that look like?
Tell her to give us a call. Yeah. No.
So
Oh,
I was a year or so ago. I was chatting with Michael Fortune, and he was working in his shop, and I could tell that he was near the Panda router, and said, "Michael, show me what you're doing." So if you know Michael Fortune's work, he does nothing that's square. Everything is just these wild curves and arcs and all. So he had a jig set up, as Michael's notorious for. He has a jig set up on the table of the Panda
Yeah.
router. His piece was coming out, making this long arc, and then was clamped to the door frame to his
Yeah.
office. That was his
Wow.
setup, right? And he was making these perfect wild joints, and um, to your point, he figured out a way to do this, and to do it repeatably, because he'll make a dozen of these chairs for a client. Um, so anyway, it's a great, almost open source. You
Yeah.
could custom make templates if you
Mm-hmm.
need, um, but when people show us how they've used it, we just stand in awe of their creativity and imagination.
well, and I think kind of like what you're saying, it's you have the end product in your
Yeah.
head and or maybe drawn out, but you might not necessarily have it completely flushed out on how you actually turn that idea into a real
Yeah.
piece. And, I think that's the fun for a lot of woodworkers is, okay, how do I get a tenon on the end of this bent lamb, chair leg? That's tough. And you kind of just start cycling through, maybe do it at the bandsaw, maybe the router table. I could do something weird on my table saw. And I think when people have this machine in their shop, it becomes another option in the back of their mind, and more they end up reaching for it of, oh, I could just do a little round over with the Panda router when I'd rather have the workpiece stationary instead of trying to stand it up on end on a router table, for instance. So it's kind of a fun problem solving tool to have in the back of your head whenever you're trying to figure all that stuff out.
So I'm on your website, I was looking at your cart that you created. Um,
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's right here.
standing in
oh,
front of
okay.
you.
And the cart really is to be able to handle longer pieces, right? Like, is not only just to hold it, but to handle
Yeah.
longer pieces. So ideally, you could put a like a beam on the end of it and sort of cut around it as well. Is that something like?
Sure. 8 foot long bed rail, no
Got you.
problem. You support it just like you would in any of the tools in your shop, and you can support it to the side, to the end. And this is one of the really cool things about our machine compared to another that kind of looks similar that's on the market, is that our router moves to the
Mm,
workpiece. There's another one that is a horizontally held router, but you have to move the table
And the
to
workpiece.
and the
got you.
workpiece to the
Got you.
router, and then move it back and forth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds
It's
dangerous.
we do all the X, Y, and
Sure.
Z with two hands instead of three levers. We only have two, and we do it all on the fixed table.
But yeah, you can get pretty big, you know, pieces and really small pieces, and I think that's sort of one of the major things that ends up uh, being appealing to people is, this can be used for a jewelry box or to build your shop
Yeah.
doors, and kind of anything in between that. And um, no, I've definitely messed around with some pretty long and pretty heavy stuff, but having it stationary is a game
Yeah,
changer.
I'm also looking at your table, your walnut table, um, that you did too. And yeah,
Oh yeah,
I was just trying to see like what part that you do. And that's really, yeah, you can get as detailed, which would take a lot of effort and a lot of equipment in order to do that. Guys, I'm a
yeah. And I
fan.
built
I'm a
two of them at
fan.
the same time.
I'm a fan. This
Yeah.
is cool. This is, I mean, I don't know why it took me so long to find you, but I'm glad that I found you. I'm a big fan. So like I'm a big fan of accessibility, and
Mhm.
and oftentimes when you are approaching problems to different markets, there are different ways to solve them, right? Like, and how you get and expand a market, it's like usually there's like, whether it's money or, space, those are things preventing like mass market adoption, right? So like people either can't afford it, or they don't have the space, or they don't have access to the material, the information in order for you to, take part in something, right? And
Right.
so like one of my old clients, they are a portable chainsaw mill, and
Oh sure.
it was called Granberg. And people have logs that they want to mill, and oftentimes they can't afford a $15,000 piece of sawmill, and a lot of times too, um, you can't take a sawmill to where the tree is. And so like you have this
Right.
everybody owns a chainsaw, not everybody, but all you need to do is attach this thing to a chainsaw, and you've leveled the playing field, level, like completely level. And so what
Right.
I like about this is like you're replacing so many pieces of equipment, and what you're able to do is allow for creativity to shine, and democratizing and making it more accessible for the customer, right? Because of
hmm
this piece of equipment. And I often get that, furniture doesn't have to be expensive. It needs to have good value, but it doesn't need to
Hmm.
be so expensive. And so for me, I'm like, if if there were more uh, woodworkers that had access to this that could make quality furniture, I bet you something like Pantorouter could drive the price down and increase the market share of custom furniture.
Well, we would love to help the small furniture maker be
Yeah,
profitable so that they can continue making and creating, because you are right. Some of them do absolutely astoundingly
yeah,
beautiful work, and we love to be able to
yeah, yeah,
further
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Just be able to, I mean, to your point, it is uh, often, what I found, at least a lot of these clients, some of them are incredibly wealthy and it's just another fun thing that they're purchasing that day. But a lot of people that I'd built stuff for, this was one of the most expensive purchases
Yeah,
of their year. And I feel like the people who often uh, are making those very deliberate decisions and tighter budgets, it's they end up appreciating it so much more
Mm.
and are, they're like, I won't let anyone put a cup on this table,
for
or
sure.
they're so excited about this. So to be able to give them well built furniture that you know looks nice and is what they're
Yeah,
looking for, because even mass produced store bought furniture is not
no,
cheap anymore. And so if you're gonna make an investment, I think woodworkers enjoy offering that, and it just doesn't really pan out to build a dresser and hand cut every dovetail for a lot of
for
people.
sure, absolutely. All right, cool. So this is a part of the podcast where I give you any marketing or business advice. Is there anything that I could help you with, or something that you need to think through in terms of marketing or advertising?
So we know that at least the magazines tell us that, look, there's about 2 million active
Mm-hmm.
woodworkers, and more coming into the industry, to the craft
Yeah,
every day. And we'd love to be able to explain the Pantorouter to each and every one, and to explain the functionality, the just sheer fun of
yeah,
use, the safety, the to inspire them with kind of open this up for their own creativity, um, and getting to everybody is
yeah,
difficult and
yeah,
expensive. So the closer we can get that to, I guess, a total penetration, every woodworker knows about it and has an idea what it could do to assist and aid them. That's I know it's a pretty broad topic, but or request, but that's really what we need to do.
yeah. Um, yeah, I have some ideas. John Henry, is that along the same lines of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's to kind of expand on that a little bit. Also, just figuring out beyond the exposure side of it. Okay, I know what it is, or at least have some idea of what it is. How can we best assist those customers in the first 6 months to a
Yeah,
year of them owning it, so that they actually are using it? And once you're familiar and once you're using it in your shop, I think it becomes a staple. But it's a new way of doing things, and it can be somewhat intimidating to someone who opens up a box with 20 different templates and all of these parts and pieces, which all have their function and place. But any advice on just, would that be project based, and really instructing people through a project? Would that be more along the lines of video stuff? I don't know. Just trying to help folks out once they're really getting going on
yeah.
it.
So I have lots of ideas. One is let's get your super users and give them marketing budget to just literally just post on your behalf all the time. And I think it's about before and after. So like when you think about and you have a great strong brand like visual identity, so I feel like you need to make, from a branding perspective, you need to make uh your logo as known as Festool or Milwaukee or Ryobi or what have you. And so that's the first thing, is to literally get the name out there as much as possible. In many, like, slap it on everything woodworking related, everything, because the woodworking market is so broad that you actually never know who um, you'll never know who will naturally gravitate towards it without going broad. Once you sort of figure out who are the people first adopting, coming to you, and you could do this by, surveying your current audience and just really understanding them, would be to literally put their projects and put their their use case of your tool on display. That's the second thing. The third thing is to build a community amongst all of those people. Like, have them all in the same room, right? Virtually, right? Um, and heck, why not get them physically together as well? To just get everybody in the same room, because the vibe that I'm getting from Pantorouter and talking to you is the same. It's like, I'm not saying it's crypto. I'm not saying it's Linux, right? Like, it has like this underground cult feel to it. There's not
Sure.
a lot of people that are
Yeah.
up on Pantorouter and what it could provide. So it feels like an insider. It feels like a cheat code.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas,
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
whereas normally, so like, I know woodworkers like to eat crap, meaning they like to work super hard. They sand when they shouldn't sand. They make mistakes. They do builds all over again. They work hard, and they love the idea of the romanticism around craftsmanship. And then you got people that just want to build stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I fall into that bucket too, right? I'm like, people are like, yeah, you can build. I'm like, yeah, I can build, but I'm not like, I build because I love it, but it's not, I don't identify with it. It's not like, it's not, my end all be all. I'm not walking around with, custom pencils in my pocket. Like, that's not me. But there are a lot of
Right.
people that just want to build, and they don't have the space, they don't have the money to get a big table router and the dust collection and this and this and this. Like, to me, I think you pair up Pantorouter and a couple other tools, and you know what you do? You say, here's a woodworking business in a box.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you give
That's
them
very good.
a set of plans, and then you tell them exactly how to do it. And you just demystify the whole, like, you debunk the whole entire thing. I've often said, and maybe not necessarily, this, but like, I know you mentioned that there's a competitor out there. I'd welcome all of them, right? Like, all of them. And then you just highlight the difference. The difference that you have is that both of you are standing here. I don't know if the other people would even show up to a podcast, right? You have the legacy, you have the name, you have the brand, you have the idea out there, right? And so for me, I'm like, just put it on everything. That's how, like, you can't put a price on brand awareness at all. But like, because everybody always seen those videos of the table saws that just cutting little slits. Like, you don't need to do that
Right.
anymore. Like, you
Right.
could
Right.
take, you could take, you can on a very mass level, you can create somebody can make bespoke chairs at scale for a fraction of the price and a fraction of the space that you need with a Pantorouter.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
They can make a small batch of 50 chairs with one design.
yeah,
And they don't
exactly.
need
And thinking back,
hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment at all. That to
yeah,
me is exciting.
and you really do think, yeah, you think about what what the alternative would be if you were cutting compound angle tenon on a crest rail of a chair. It's not the only way, but when you really play out, okay, this would take really expensive slot mortiser, or this would take, a lot of custom jigs and equipment. To the accessibility issue, it's just a lot of people don't have that space or uh, capital to just put into tools hoping that it works. I
Exactly.
mean, for the price point and the size it takes up, it's
It's
pretty hard to
really
beat.
hard to beat. I think the thing that I think about, right, for you, so like both you, Mac, and John Henry, it would be like this. How can I get the most talented people to be using Pantorouter? That's it. Like, how can I get the most talented people to use this or replace their current existing system with Pantorouter and broadcast that out for everybody to see? Because it's almost like the 4 minute mile to me, right? Like, I mean, I've been in this space for like 7 years. I've seen all sorts of tools and I know the limitations behind a lot of them. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, get talented people to just show off and document their whole entire process and give it away for free to everybody and let them know there's two options to do this. You could spend money on a table router, table saw. You can spend it on a CNC, or you can spend your $2,500 and get a Pantorouter and do the same exact thing. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
helpful?
it's it is. Yeah, it's definitely validating and reassuring, and it's something that we're always striving for, and we also feel like word of mouth, both person to person, but from folks like you who say, I know the best woodworker who would make use of this. We always, value input of that as well.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking to your chair buddy, or, as just you talk shop with folks in general, we always appreciate recommendations for working with folks and trying to get in the hands of the right people.
We are wide open to partnering with people to demonstrate. It helps them and their feeds and their channels, and of course their furniture, their work, and certainly it helps us. And we're always looking for those people.
Your videos are also hypnotizing. That's the no. I'm saying, like, I'm very serious that like you're sitting on a huge potential by just literally telling your current customers to share way more, way more. Like, I would dive in. So for me, I'm like, how can I get the most talented the talented makers to use it, and two, how can I make it almost like a source of pride to share my Pantorouter videos? You know what I mean? Like, you should have aim to people when people share. So like, depending on your algorithm on Instagram, right? Like, I fell into this algorithm of old BMWs because I love old BMWs, right? Like the old 325s, like the ones from like the 80s.
Sure.
And there's like, people share their videos and then they tag a few of the major influencer accounts, and their whole pages are all about old BMWs. And
Mm.
they have like a few 100,000 followers, but it's like this source of pride to get reposted onto that page. And I feel like that's the level that you should aspire to with your brand and your clients.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
No, that's...
Oh my God, guys. So tell everybody your website so that they can follow you.
Pantorouter.com.
Yep. And Pantorouter USA on Instagram.
Yep.
I would love to mention that we recently launched, to your point about community, a user gallery on our site. And that allows people to upload their projects and kind of give a bit more description and multiple photos around what they did and how they used it. And while it's still in its infancy, we want it to be a great resource for people. So if anyone has a Pantorouter, certainly upload your projects. We'd love to feature them.
Yeah, and it's PANTO router.com. Cool.
Correct.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks for
take care.
having us.
Yeah, thank you.